Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunatu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Open this box. Not log off. Getting better at it. All right, where are we in our text?
Verse 21.
Verse 21. And the subject that Krishna is dealing with, he's talked about him being the essence of everything, and everything is in him, and Arjun gets a big question mark on his forehead, so he gives him a series of examples. And again, these point, they do not define. He is the strength and the strong. He is the light and the sun and the moon. He is Om in the Vedas. All this sort of stuff to try to explain the idea that the self is the life principle. And all living beings, the very essence of what everything is. And I used a more modern image. Electricity is the enlivening principle in all appliances. It is the light in the light bulb. It is the motion in the fan. It is the sound in the stereo. Yet, electricity is not light, motion, or sound. All right, going on.
Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shraddhaya chirtumicchati tasya tasya chalam shraddham tameva vidadhamyaham. Whatsoever form any devotee desires to worship with faith, that same faith of his I make firm and unflinching.
So, now he's covering a bunch of very interesting ideas. He has said In whatever way people approach me, so am I to them. He said that when anybody worships anything, remember we talked about my God is my good. That's what I am for them, meaning I am the very essence of the happiness that everyone experiences. Now he gives us a third idea. And read the English one more time for me.
Whatsoever form any devotee desires to worship with faith, that same faith of his I make firm and unflinching.
So it's not only is Krishna the form that is worshipped, but Krishna becomes the very essence of the faith. Now, what's the deeper meaning of this? If you have decided that, let's say, approval is unconsciously your God, then you may live a whole life seeking approval. And because of our commitment to that, my faith that approval will do it becomes very strong. If you're convinced that cash and prizes, making money, is where safety, security, status, value is, because that gives us happiness, the faith in that becomes strong. In the religious sense, if you are a Christian and you believe that if you do the rosary and pray to the Blessed Virgin Mary, the infinite shows up as the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it makes our faith strong. So fascinating. To my knowledge, I have yet to come across a culture that did not have prayer. By prayer, I mean here supplicatory prayer. Oh God, please help me, give me, or save somebody else. Every culture I've ever come in contact with has some form of this. Lots and lots of people believe, oh, it works. That's why we do it. Now, the Master Jesus cut to the heart of it. He always said, thy faith has made thee whole. Was it people's faith in Jesus or Jesus that healed them? So here Krishna is saying, huge component in this is our belief. Now, let's talk about the deepest teaching of this. So I frequently will talk about what's the difference between Tantra and just Jnana Yoga. So to kind of summarize, both would say all this is like a dream. Tantra would say, yeah, but it doesn't have to be a nightmare. And the Tantris understand, and the yogis do too, the basic rule of sankalpa. Any thought, feeling, wish, intention, desire, consistently maintained that isn't conflicted or contradicted, tends towards grossification, tends towards manifestation. This is the underlying principle behind prayer. Prayer doesn't change God. Prayer changes the one who's praying. Prayer changes our deeply rooted, largely unconscious sankalpas. That's what it does. Now, the psychologists and philosophers talk about a fetish. Who can tell me what a fetish is? I don't mean the sexual understanding of it. What is a fetish?
An irrational obsession with something.
No, it's an object to which you imbue supernatural powers.
Ooh, interesting.
So, like a totem pole is a fetish. If you have like what do they call them? Dream catchers. People will put them on their windows in their car. It's a fetish. If you have a St. Anthony medal that you wear around your neck, that's a fetish. A mantra is a fetish. When you're chanting, Guru says, chant Lalita Sahasranam to accomplish da 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 da. The mantra, the chant is a fetish. Now, I'm not saying these are bad. In Hinduism, we have gems. We have all these things which help us to engender belief. And it's the belief that makes stuff happen. Did that make sense? Yes, no.
I think so. I'm curious about one thing, particularly related to chanting and mantra and japa. Like, I get the talisman and even the
Talisman.
idols.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's an idea. That's another word for it.
So, like a talisman or like an idol that we put in, like a Buddha statue or something that can be imbued. But they don't, like when you chant mantra, I think my personal experience has been a little bit like the sound energy does something to you eventually. Like chanting the Gita, even remember, like
Absolutely. I never said it didn't. Millions of people have imbued psychic energy, spiritual energy into these word thoughts. You think that means nothing? Of course they have power. Never said they didn't. If Native Americans do a particular ritual ceremony, does it have power? I can only share with you my own direct experience. When I was at St. Augustine, coming up on the 1st of November, we have the Dia de los Muertos in Hispanic culture, the Day of the Dead. This is an amalgam of Catholicism with much, much older ancestor worship in Native Americans. So at the beginning of November, we would build what they call an altarcito, which is a little side altar, and everybody puts up pictures of their dead relatives. And it was to remember the dead. But we would also invite Aztec dancers to come. Because one of the people who was very active in the church, Jude Solario, participated in Nahual ceremonies. So these Aztec dancers would come in with feathers and bells and stuff like that, and conch shells, and drums, and they would invoke experience. And you could feel it. I mean, if you're sensitive, they'd be chanting and dancing, and all of a sudden, these powers were in the room. And Jude would take the sage and incense Father Mark, and then incense the altar, and then go over and incense the altar seat. Now, if you're a good Catholic, you would say, superstition, superstition. I can only share with you my direct experience. Of course it worked. Because millions, millions, millions of people have been imbuing these ceremonies, these chants, these rituals with their belief.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
I get the same experience when I go to a symphony or like a music concert of any kind, or even a rave, right? Like if you go when you're listening to sound and music that is really uplifting,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that anyone has consciously imbued it with power. But
No, but you've got hundreds of people of like mind. So
who
what you're
respond to the
tuning
same-
into, responding, it's very different if you put the same piece of music on the stereo at home.
Oh, so there's a collective consciousness of
You
people.
got it.
Oh, got
Those
it.
are living minds. Isn't that your experience?
Yeah.
You can. What's an artist? What kind of concert did you go to?
Zakir Hussain, tabla guy.
Okay, so you put him. You get one of his CDs. You put it on the stereo. It's nice, but it's not the same as a live performance.
Yeah, ever.
Yeah. And it's a gestalt. It's the artist. They're going into a zone, which is a living thing, which doesn't necessarily come through the DVD. And the audience is in a zone. So they're shaping a mental space. When we study Viveka Chudamani, it will probably come up this Thursday. Shankara will say in the group of 6, the Samadhi Guna, he will talk about Shraddha. What is Shraddha? Anybody remember?
Devotion.
Faith.
Faith.
So, but it has more to it than the English word faith. I have faith that when I turn the light switch, the light will go on. I have faith when I turn the key, the car will start. I have faith that when the sun sets in the evening, it's going to go up the next day. I can have faith in Lord Ganesh to remove my obstacles. But there's a deeper understanding of Shraddha. What Shankar will say, it is by our Shraddha that the truth of the teaching of the teacher is transmitted to the student. What does that mean? This is subtle stuff. The student at some point will develop the capacity to drop their minds and surrender. Go where the teacher goes. Someone used to say it's a borrowed glory. But what the Guru can then do is show us the awakened state of mind, depending on how open we are, how sensitive we are. Our capacity to go where the teacher goes is our Shraddha. Now we all have it. So you go listen to the Beethoven Third Symphony, and you go, oh, that second movement is so sad. How do you know it's sad? What is it that allows you to go where Beethoven's mind went? Or I can sit here and I can tell you about a beautiful sunset at, say, Ocean Beach with the clouds in the sky, and oh, the mad painter was at work, and all the colors in the sky as the sun went down. And if you've had a similar experience, you immediately go where my mind went. Does that make sense? Yes? No?
Yeah.
That's your Shraddha. No English word for that. So in those, we have to understand that the mind is a sense organ. We have the 5 outer senses: hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing. And then we have the mind. And the mind senses all the sphere. Fascinating. It's fascinating. And we all have it. It's not that we're psychic, but yes, we are. You go into a church or a temple where people have prayed for hundreds and hundreds of years. Likewise, you can walk into, say, a staff meeting at work, and you can tell, people have been fighting. There's issues going on here. You ever had that experience?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could tell, Wendy, if the staff were having problems or not. Nobody needed to say a word, and it wasn't just body language. You could feel the energy. So much of what makes for a good restaurant is energy, isn't it? Yes?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you learn to develop that sense, maybe not deliberately and consciously. Makes you a good manager. All this is part of it. But the basic thing that Shankara is saying, not Shankara, Krishna is saying here, whatever it is that I believe in, that I worship, that I commit to, he is that which makes our faith firm, so that it seems like the object of my worship delivers the goods. Now, going back to the mantras that you learned from your chanting guru, does that mean that somebody in Denmark is just out of luck?
No.
Because they don't speak? They cannot get value from some other modality?
Of course they do, yeah.
Yes. Now, what we all tend to do is, my culture is better than the other ones, We have the secret wisdom. Every culture has that.
But it's also interesting because what he's saying, if I'm understanding, is what you value. And it may be not what you think it is, right? Like we may be coming to a spiritual class or going to church, but if the way we're living is showing that we're valuing money, right? Or something other than what we think we're valuing, right?
Yes.
So
I'll give you the clearest example in the world. I cannot tell you how many alcoholic priests I've known who say they worship Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. It's not true. They worship gin as their Lord and Savior.
right.
They just don't realize it.
Right. So it sort of seems like he's inviting inquiry for us to look very deeply at what you often
got
say
it.
if you want to
You
know
got
what
it.
you believe and look at your life.
You got it.
Right. Yeah.
You got it. Very good. Very good.
So then what is implied is not having any fetish is the actual pure state.
Well, yes and no. Let me give you another real live example. So Swamiji's guru, Swami Tapovana, was a great Vedanta, Paka Sanskritist. Very austere. And one of his journeys, he walked all the way from Rishikesh to Sharada Temple, which is now in Pakistan. I don't know, how far away is that? Maybe 1,000 miles. You know what he did when he got there? He hung out with the priests and the devotees and sang devotional hymns to the mother. Now, I'm sure he knew it is not that which you worship here. But why not worship her? You know? If it floats your boat, why not? So these various talismans, these various philosophical terms, the fetishes, there's nothing wrong with them. For most of us, it helps to have some object to kind of anchor our faith, to anchor our belief.
And to encourage us, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we want to be careful to say, oh, chanting these mantras is it. Lourdes, they're just superstitious. Then why do they get healed at Lourdes? Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I should let go of my chanting and go worship the Blessed Virgin Mary. No, it doesn't matter in the end. It's your faith that's important, that's strong. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yeah.
So I'm in no way saying that your chanting is superstition.
No, but I didn't imply that, but I'm wondering that eventually for a sadhak or doing sadhana, right? Like moving in the direction of being yogi or one with Brahman, eventually you have to drop all of these fetishes and crutches, right? Like,
well, it depends on what you want to accomplish.
Right. Okay. What about if I want to accomplish Aham Brahmasmi?
Well, I mean, if your chanting guru says, if you do this chant, it will help you with this mental state. Or if you do that particular chant, it'll help you with your digestion. Knock yourself out. It may work a hell of a lot better than Pepto-Bismol. You know? I mean, let's go there for a minute. We all know in medicine the placebo effect. What's the placebo effect? Dr. Mark, tell us what the placebo effect is.
It's when belief causes a cure to happen.
Yeah. Is it real? Does it really happen?
Yeah, it does happen.
Why? Exactly what I'm talking about. All right, enough of this one. Let's go on to the next verse.
No more fetishes.
Good one.
I'm sure I'm right on this. Alexa, what is a fetish?
The noun fetish can have a few meanings. 1. An object regarded with awe as being the embodiment or habitation of a potent spirit or as having magical potency. 2.
Alexa,
Any
stop. See?
That's awesome. To discover new meaning to that. Should I?
You can also use the kinky one if you wish.
Should I go on?
Please.
Sataya Shraddhaya Yukta Astasyaradhana Mihate Labhate cha tata kaman Mayeva Vihitan Hitan. Endowed with that faith, he engages in the worship of that devata, and from it he obtains his desire fulfillments.
Yes.
All these being ordained indeed by me alone.
So, if someone opens a shop and installs a murti of Lakshmi, then they hire the pujari to come and do a Lakshmi puja. Why do they do that?
For money, wealth, generation,
Does it work?
sometimes.
Is there really a Lakshmi who says, they didn't do a puja to me? Broke. Yeah. Love those flowers and smoke. Is there such a God? Maybe there is. Or is it because millions and millions of people have believed in the power of this ritual? Is it any different than a bunch of little old ladies getting together to do the rosary for somebody in the church who's sick? This is what Krishna is saying. And why does it work? It works because of the power of belief, because belief is another name for sankalpa. This is what Jesus meant when he said, whatsoever you ask, believing, so shall you receive. Now, we have to understand we have limited freedom to do some dream shaping. Nobody can do a sankalpa and change the speed of light. That's Ishvara's sankalpa. You may prolong your life by a year, 5 years, maybe a decade. Nobody gets out without death. That's the Lord's sankalpa. You may say, pooping is nasty, I'm gonna not do it anymore. All bodies poop. It's the Lord's sankalpa. But we have a lot more freedom than we think. And it doesn't matter how you shift your underlying belief system. If the chanting, for example, feels right and you're drawn to it, then it is right. I, on the other hand, was drawn to spiritual mind healing, which I practiced for 7 years before I met Swamiji. That's work I still do. I don't talk about it too much. All sorts of things. My friend Angel He's deeply involved in an Aztec tradition where they do ceremony with intentions. Does it work? Of course it works. Now, I always think of this example. So it's the high school football team. And one team is taking a knee in the end zone, praying to win this game. And the other team is taking a knee and praying to win the game. Oh my God, what's God going to do? Essentially, the one with the stronger sankalpa will win the game. He's had the better training, more intense desire, focus. If you've ever been a sports person, you know that you can feel this dominance of energy that goes back and forth. How much of it's psychological? Intention. The yogi just begins to see the underlying principle. That's all. And perhaps use it a little more consciously. All right, next verse.
अन्तवत्तु फलं तेषां तद्भवत्यल्पमेधसां देवान् देवयजो यान्ति मद्भक्ता यान्ति मामपि. Verily, the fruit that accrues to those men of little intelligence is finite. The worshippers of these devas go to the devas, but my devotees come to me.
So again, back in chapters 3, 4, and 5, we had our definition of deva. Deva comes from the root div, which means to shine. And in Gita, it usually means the presiding principle over a field of human endeavor. So, for example, how long were you in the food business, the restaurant business, Wendy?
40 years.
40 years. So you spent a lot of time worshiping the food deva.
Mhm.
What do I mean by that? Developing the skills, developing the management style, having clear intention, loving what you do, not being distracted with other things, getting through issues around fear and control and stuff like that. You could tell me better than I could tell you. But all of these are the puja, the rituals you did to become a successful restaurateur. Now, Wendy is living proof. Did your restaurant last forever?
No.
So these worshippers of the devas go to the devas. But the fruits of their worship, which is always to get something, it's always fine. No blame, it's just what it is. It's what it is. But my devotees come to me. Why engage in the science of self-knowledge, the practice of yoga? Everything in the world of name and form, here symbolized by the devas, is finite. It's little. It changes. And in the end, gone. But you are nityam, eternal. You are inexhaustible. There is no end to how deeply you can revel in the self. Infinite and eternal and always available and unconditional. The economy doesn't affect it. Your age doesn't affect it. It's always there. That's what Krishna is saying. There's a story in Yoga Vasishta of this person who goes out in a field and he finds the Chintamani, the very fabled wish-fulfilling gem. Oh, the wish-fulfilling gem, you get everything you want. But he doesn't realize what it is, so he discards it, keeps hunting around, and he finds some pieces of colored glass. He thinks, oh, these are precious gems. I'm so lucky. Look at what I have here. Red glass. That's you and me. Chidananda Rupaha. My form is bliss consciousness. But if I disregard that, set it aside, go after people, places, things, and conditions, thinking that's where the juice is, like the idiot who disregarded the Chintamani, instead picked up the colored glass. Next verse.
Avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhaya param bhavamajajan jananto mamavyaya manuttamam. The foolish think of me, the unmanifest, as having come to manifestation, not knowing my higher, immutable, and fearless nature.
So, this word avyakta is used to mean many, many things. Vyakta means manifested. Avyakta means not manifested. So here what he's referring to, the self, is not a thing. Foolish people think the deity they worship has a form and it's out there. I'm going to worship Lord Krishna. He is like on the statue playing flute. Going to worship Lord Shiva. There he is over there, sitting in lotus posture. Jesus, my Lord and Savior. The Buddha himself becomes an icon, an idol. What Krishna is saying here is there's nothing wrong with that. It's a stage in our spiritual unfolding. But it is not that you worship here, the Upanishad thunders. It is your very self. So God has no physical form. Or we must say, all forms are God's forms. God is not limited to its form. It is the eternal subject. Never known as an object, cannot be known by the mind, yet is always known. So, any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritah Mundhoyam nabhijanati loko mamajamavyayam. I am not manifest to all in my real nature, veiled by divine Maya. This deluded world knows not me, the unborn, the imperishable.
So many people ask a question, or when they are asked the question, they don't quite get the right answer. If I were to say, where is the locus of Maya, divine illusion? Many people will say, oh, it's in my mind. That's not correct. Your mind is in Maya. The locus of Maya is Brahman. Maya is a very strange word. It's the word we use to describe how the impossible appears to be possible. What do I mean by that? Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman, Krishna is consciousness. Unchanging, omnipresent, kutusta, solid, still, vijnana ghanam, a homogeneous mass of knowing itself that never changes its nature. Yet, inherent within it is this apparent capacity to manifest an entire cosmos. The world's not created the way a potter creates a pot. It's imagined. It appears. So the inherent nature of Brahman, to have this Maya Shakti, is like the inherent nature of the mirror to reflect. Going into the bathroom, I look into the mirror, there's my face. The fat old man. Deepa goes in, she looks in the mirror, there's an attractive young woman. Did the mirror change into a fat old man or an attractive young woman? Did the mirror undergo any change at all? No. But its nature is to reflect an image. The mirror itself appears as the reflection of Jim or Deepa. Yet it undergoes no change at all. So consciousness that is one without a second appears to have an entire creation issue forth from it. Yet it remains this immovable substrate. Every being experiences as aham, as I. But part of the nature of that Maya Shakti is the beings in this world do not know they are Brahman. Many cultures talk about this with allegory. So, for example, we have the story of Adam and Eve to explain original sin. Doesn't mean historically there was an Adam and Eve. But basically, they eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, the dvandvas, the pairs of opposites. And their eyes were opened and they were ashamed, meaning they had paranoid self-observation. How am I doing? Am I okay? And then what do they do next? Anybody remember the story? They hide in the bushes. They hide from God. We want to cover up our creativity with fig leaves. And we have to work and struggle. Wonderful allegory. But the fact is, there's no why. We are just born into this condition of spiritual ignorance, where people do not know that they are eternal, immutable, untouched by sorrow, ever, birthless, deathless. Just don't know it. Any thoughts on this? Now, even though Maya is co-eternal with the self, Brahman, individuals can wake up, cross over. It is possible. That's what moksha, liberation is. Just because you or I become enlightened doesn't mean the universe ceases to exist. Here, it's a better word. Next verse.
Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mamatu vedana kasyana. I know, O Arjuna, the beings of the past and present and the future, but no one knows me.
So, people who lived 10,000 years ago, Bronze Age, Somebody who was there perhaps in some Bronze Age village, and they were aware of the huts, and they were aware of the flocks, and they were aware of the fields. What was it in them? What was the knowing principle that knew that Bronze Age life? Pure awareness. Right here, right now, sitting in my living room. You have your perceptions, you know your feelings, you know your thoughts. But who or what is it that knows all that phenomenon? Pure consciousness. 10,000 years in the future. Whatever's going on, wherever humans are, or if we're gone and it's super intelligent cockroaches, who will be the knowing principle? Still Krishna. He is the knower of the field and all fields through all of time. Now, don't believe me. Just look to your direct experience. Go back and think when you were 10 years old. Who was it who knew your 10-year-old body and your 10-year-old life? Me. Then you became a young adult, a teenager. Who knew the teenager's experience and body? Me. You became an adult, starting out on the great adventure of life. Who knew all that? Me. Some of us are a little older, hopefully a little wiser. But whatever life we have today, who knows it, right? And God willing, I wake up tomorrow. Who will know tomorrow? Me. Who is that eternal factor that knows past, present, and future in all beings? Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Hang on, I'm just a little confused. I did this one or the previous one?
Did we go out of sequence by accident?
No. No. इच्छा द्वेष समुत्थेन द्वन्द्वमोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परं तप. By the delusion of the pairs of opposites arising from desire and aversion, O Bharata, all beings are subject to delusion at birth, O Parantapa, scorcher of foes.
Yes. So we carry these impressions from prior incarnations such that we are born into a life deluded by the pairs of opposites, attachment and aversion, good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure. In Panchadashi, we've had this wonderful breakdown of this process. So Ishvara, the infinite Lord, creates a world of name and form, which is essentially neutral. But I perceive the world of name and form. Then I superimpose on it all the associations, the sankalpas, the samskaras, the vasanas of my past. Oh, this is good. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, that was such a wonderful experience. Let's do it again. That creates my world with quality, raga, dvesha, dukkha, sukha, pleasure and suffering. That's what keeps the whole karma chakra, life after life after life. Don't have to believe in reincarnation. Just look to this life. Why? Because I do not know who I am. And part of not knowing who I am is I do not know what causes misery and what causes happiness. I think I'm unhappy because I'm not getting what I want. I'm happy temporarily because I got what I want. But somehow it's not working out real well. Yoga says, no, my dear, you are unhappy because as the fruit of your ignorance, you do not see that it's the wanting itself that's so painful. You do not know that the mind freed from the tyranny of raga dvesha comes home, has peace. Next verse.
Yesham twantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mama dridvrataha. But those men of virtuous deeds, whose sins have come to an end, who are freed from the delusion of the pairs of opposites, and steadfast in vows, worship me.
So, punya and papa. Here he's translated punya as virtuous deeds, and papa whose sins have been cleansed. Let's go a little more deeply into the meaning of this. We do not want to have what I call a juridical approach to punya and papam. What do I mean by juridical? There is no God as a combination of Santa Claus and traffic cop. Oh, I didn't do the right ritual before I ate. Papa! 6 lifetimes, as it were.
Mhm.
Doesn't work that way. Oh, I did chanting 9 days. Punya. Oh, ho, 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 yes. You come back next lifetime, you get $1 million. Doesn't work that way. So for a yogi, here is the definition of punya and papa. Punya, merit. Any action, gross or subtle, that is conducive to quiescence of mind. What is papa, sin? Any action, gross or subtle. By subtle, I mean emotive thinking, which has as its effect grossification of mind, meaning I have more agitation, more craving. So, as we begin to lead a more intelligent life, we begin to see there are some spiritual principles. Ahimsa, nonviolence, satya, honesty, straightforwardness, saucha, literally cleanliness, purity of thought and action as well as body. Don't be a jerk. Be a nice person. It goes a long way. Live a life of integrity. Makes things easier. We begin to find that a lot of the upsets of life start to fall away. And our mind starts to turn inward naturally. And in the end, the greatest of all purifiers is knowledge of the self. Why? Because the self is already pure. The self is beyond the pairs of opposites. Success and failure, virtue and vice, good and evil. So again, go back to what Swamiji used to say all the time. The way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. Have the shift of identity. Be ever the witness of the silliness of the mind. Then it starts to heal itself. But if I'm identified with it, I'm always struggling and fighting and fixing and trying to control. I'm caught up with more papa, not enough punya. Never ending effort. Any thoughts on this? Next verse. Oops, nope, we should stop. We've got a couple minutes. What verse are we on for next week?
29.
29. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.